All right, welcome in, Buck fans. It is draft week here in beautiful Sunshine State, Tampa, Florida. Draft is going to be starting Thursday night. Kansas City. I don't know if it's Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri, but who cares? It's in Kansas City. You have found us here on the No Quarter Given podcast. We're going to give you our Bucs Draft preview. I'm your host, Jason, along with my tag team partner, one Peter Blake.
Yes, sir. What's going on? I love the NFL draft because it's actually the first event that I remember as a youngster at 8 years old watching. And of course, in 1987, who was the first overall pick for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the time?
I believe that's probably one Vinny Testaverde.
That is correct. And that's why it's so special for me with the NFL draft every year, because it's actually the first football event that I remember as an 8-year-old kid. So it's special for me, Jason Powers.
That a boy. I'm gonna at the end of our podcast, I'm gonna ask you to give me a favorite draft and a worst draft. So hold those thoughts till we get there.
Oh
our Tampa Bay Buccaneers are drafted 19th overall in the first round. We have picks in the second round, third round, no fourth round pick. We have a fifth round pick. We have 3 sixth round picks. And we have a 7th round pick. So we've got, looks like 8 draft picks here starting on Thursday. We'll go Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Again, Kansas City will be the home of the draft this year. You'll be able to find it ESPN, NFL Network, all that good stuff. So whichever is your favorite viewing pleasure. ABC is also going to have the draft as well. So lots of interesting nuggets for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as we approach a critical draft, the first post-Tom Brady draft in the last several years. We'll see what Jason Light and the personnel staff have up their sleeve. Will they trade down? Will they trade up? Will they stay where they're at? Lots of decisions could be moving around. A lot of moving parts come Thursday night.
No, absolutely. And it's always for me, ESPN and Mel Kiper. And I could tell a story about that here just a little bit later. The reason why it's always Mel Kiper, because I got an actual chance to talk to him on the phone when I used to subscribe to his draft report, and I was doing a Pasco County public access draft special in 1996.
I know you're doing a mock draft of your own on Wednesday night with some viewers on the as part of the sports web. Give the audience a little pub on that.
Well, absolutely. We're charging a fee, a $10 fee, and you get to draft your favorite team. The Bucs are already taken, but there's other teams out there. And if you come on camera or you get on the phone and you pick what you think your team is going to do. And if you match that correctly, I'm going to take you out to lunch. I'm going to buy you lunch. It's either going to be wings or something. We're going to think of something.
A McFlurry? How about a McFlurry?
Well, you can't get that at McDonald's right now because the damn machine is broke down. In fact, it's as consistent as a broke down as it's going to be as Antonio Brown having an arrest warrant out for him. That's how consistent McDonald's is with the shake machine.
All right, Buck fans, before we get into this, we do have a guest coming up, Luke Easterling, a draft analyst for Athlon Sports. He does a great job covering the draft. That's all he does is he covers the NFL and the NFL draft. You go to Athlon Sports. He has some great content. It's a free site. I did not realize Athlon Sports was free, but it is. So you can get onto Athlon and you can check out lots of great content around the draft, football, gambling, all things sports, but Luke focuses strictly on the NFL and the NFL draft. He's a great resource. I've heard him on he's on national radio shows giving his input and stuff. So we've gotten to know Luke a little bit the last week or so. So Luke Easterling is going to be our guest. He's going to give us about a 6, 7, 8 minute breakdown of what he thinks the Buccaneers are going to do potentially and some players to be aware of. So you'll enjoy that interview. We'll have that interview probably about 20 minutes in. Peter and I are going to probably talk for about 20 minutes or so, and then we're going to go to Luke Easterling. Then we'll come back after Luke and wrap up with a couple little tidbits. All right, let's get to some nuts and bolts issues here. In your opinion, what are the 2 biggest needs? And then again, not every single round, but early in this draft, what do you think are the two biggest positional needs for the Buccaneers?
Offensive tackle, nickel corner, and I'll throw even edge rusher out there.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they're going to address the offensive tackle position because it may be already in-house. But I think those are the three biggest needs at the end of the day: offensive tackle, nickel corner, or edge rusher.
I'm with you. I think edge rusher is the biggest need, but I don't think the Bucs are going to be in a position to get one of the top 2 edge rushers. I think they're going to have to use a pick in this probably the second, third round to kind of solve that, not solve it, but at least address that issue. Offensive line, again, I'm with you. You could potentially go with what you have, but I think another guy in that room is going to be good. I think that decision will help determine whether Tristan Wirfs moves to left tackle or does he stay at right tackle, because if they're able to draft a pure left tackle in the draft, you might keep Tristan at right tackle where we know he's an all-pro player. But again, there's some options with Luke Gedeke potentially sliding to right tackle. But I do think they're going to address offensive line again early in the draft. May not be in the first round, but I think in the first 2 or 3 rounds for sure you're going to see offensive line, edge rusher in 2 of those 3 picks for sure. To me, I think an area that we need to address is speed on offense, whether that's a speed running back or a speed wide receiver. I think that's something the Bucs have got to come out of this draft with some more speed on offense.
So let me get this straight. The trade rumors are that Derrick Henry is headed to the Philadelphia Eagles. With that being said, the Tennessee Titans and the Eagles are not in on Bijan Robinson, and Mr. Robinson is on the board at 19. Do you right the wrong of 2017 when you passed on a Dalvin Cook at 19 for a tight end and go for Mr. Robinson there?
I would not do that.
Okay.
I think again, depending on who's on the board, if Bijan Robinson is clearly the best player on the board at 19, a lot of talk about Atlanta Falcons are going to take him at 8 too. A lot of steam picking up that the Atlanta Falcons might be in the market for a Bijan Robinson. Again, who knows? These GMs, all they do is lie from now until Thursday night. You're going to hear nothing but lies coming out of people's mouths about who they think, about what they like and don't like. But if a guy like Bijan Robinson fell to 19, he was one of the 2 official visits that the Bucs brought in that we know. So we know they know him. We don't know if they like him, how much they love him, but we know they know him intimately because he did come to Tampa on an official visit. Interesting decision. If you like Rachaad White that as much as we think they like Rachaad White, do you bring another guy in when you could probably get an offensive lineman? You can probably get a speedster as a scat back, a third down kind of guy, a Jahmyr Gibbs, a Devin A-Chain kind of guy in the second or third, probably the second round if you really want to address the speed. Or is Bijan Robinson that big of a prospect?
That's what you hear. You hear he's a generational talent.
Well, we heard that about Saquon Barkley.
Well, and then when Saquon can stay healthy, how different is that?
Yeah, when. Key word, when.
And that's the key to it, right? Dalvin Cook, when he's on the field,
right,
he's generational. But when he's not on the field, he doesn't help you out. And the Bucs may be thinking, you know what? We want to be the Seattle Seahawks. We want to average that 4.8 yards per carry. And we're not necessarily sure that White can do that all by himself. Furthermore, we think we can upgrade that room. I think it's a case of, and you always talk about draft and the history of not repeating it, right? So the Bucs have Cadillac Williams at the time. Adrian Peterson's on the board.
You can't take Adrian Peterson with Cadillac Williams.
I'm just saying
you can't do that.
They take Gaines Adams instead, which is a need, but you pass up on an Adrian Peterson. So does it become a situation where even though you have a Rachaad White, that you don't pass up on a Robinson because he is such a generational talent? I think definitely in that conversation.
Yeah, they'll talk about it. I think ultimately they wouldn't do that. Again, maybe wrong. Who knows? I mean, I just think there's more glaring needs on the team than another running back. If you think Rachaad, which they really like Rachaad White. They think he can be the guy. At least RB1. There might be a 1A coming in the second or third round. But again, you need some speed. You need a fast guy that can play receiver potentially, a guy that Rachaad White can catch the ball, but you need a speedster if you're going to bring in a running back.
Yeah, you could probably get Gibbs from Alabama in the second round if that's where you wanted to go and go with an offensive lineman. But let's talk about the offensive lineman here.
Okay.
Jason Powers.
I got some names for you. Let me give you some names.
Well, let's just say they go with Tristan Wirfs on the left side.
Okay. You're looking at 4 names. Here are the 4 names you're looking at.
Okay.
Potentially Darnell Wright, Tennessee,
Okay.
Broderick Jones, Georgia, Skoronski out of Northwestern, Paris Johnson, Ohio State. Those seem to be the 4 consensus tackles that will go in the first round pretty high.
One of those, I think Paris Johnson is going to go in the top 10 to Chicago.
Again, speculation is yes, not all 4 of those guys will be there at 19. At
Right.
least 2, if not 3 of those guys may be gone, and that's where the decision may come in at 19. If which of those 4 is left, do you compare him to Bijan Robinson? Do you compare him if there's another edge rusher that happens to fall? Or is there a DB there potentially? Is there a quarterback there potentially? So
Yes.
there'll be some decisions to be made there. Your thoughts?
Well, Skoronski has been, and even Luke mentioned this during our meeting, that he's more looked at as a guard.
Yep.
So you don't really need a guard at this
Right,
point.
I agree.
You got Leverett, you got Gedeke, you also got Hansey there. You got Aaron Stinney coming back. But what I'm thinking of is, would Jason Light give up on Luke Gedeke after drafting him second round last year?
I don't think so.
What if they don't go for offensive line? What if you go Tristan Wirfs on the left side, Gedeke on the right side, and you pass on an offensive lineman? If you're going to take somebody, to me, that is a comparison to a Tristan Wirfs, it's Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle from Tennessee on the right side. That's the guy for me that you're going to take. And the question is he that good where he's not going to be there? Because at the time, you thought Tristan Wirfs wasn't going to be there, and he was the 4th tackle off the board. You had to trade up one spot. So if he's still there on the board, do you have to make a trade up? Does he fall into your lap? Very interesting on draft night on April 27th.
Here's a couple of edge rushers. I'll give you a couple names that potentially could be there at 19 for the Bucs. Nolan Smith, Georgia. Remember him? If you remember him, he got injured early in the year for Georgia, missed probably the last 7 or probably 8, 9 games for Georgia, but an impact player. He's kind of an edge rushing kind of guy. We know the Bucs need an edge rusher. Shaq Barrett's future is unknown. JTS's production has been up and down, not very consistent. They need an edge rusher. Miles Murphy, a guy from Clemson. Do you go down that road? They didn't have a great year on defense this year at Clemson. Good player, but is he worth that number 19 pick in the draft?
I don't know.
I think Nolan Smith could be a guy. He has pedigree. Kirby Smart. He was basically a player coach the last 8 games when he was hurt. From all indications, we heard lots of talk out of Kirby Smart, Luke Easterling. We'll talk about Nolan Smith a little bit. But again, those are 2 names from an edge rusher perspective that could be there at 19 if you're desperate for an edge rusher. So
Luke Van Ness too, also in that conversation.
Who is that?
Luke Van Ness.
Maybe. I don't know enough about him, to be honest with you. I know he did Iowa player. The Bucs have some history with Iowa players, with Anthony Nelson, Tristan Wirfs. So they know that program well. I think potentially he could be a guy that has a lot of upside. So that's a guy that and I could see a situation where the Bucs could trade down a couple spots from 19 and maybe still get one of those 3 guys at 22, 25, whatever the number is.
Depending on if there is a Robinson on the board or quarterback, like I originally thought, and a Hendon Hooker.
We're going to that next.
Right. But with that being said, with Van Ness, the comparison has been J.J. Watt, and that's a lofty comparison. But a lot of people aren't stunned by his athleticism. But like you said, the Bucs drafted Anthony Nelson. They drafted a Tristan Wirfs. So if he's on the board, I definitely think that could be the pick. Nolan Smith, a little bit undersized, 238, 4.4 speed. Just did some
speed. But you also have to remember, again, potentially linebacker for Nolan Smith. He's an edge guy. We don't know what the future. Obviously, Devontae David's on his last legs. We don't know Devin White's future. So Smith could be a guy you could use as a pass rusher this year, and he could potentially transition to be your Devontae David's replacement, potentially Devin White's replacement. So he's versatile. He's a very versatile guy, smart guy, captain at Georgia, a integral part of that Georgia national championship run the last couple of years.
But did he have the production? Does he have the production to match? And that's what the Bucs are going to have.
You're right.
Like 12 and a half sacks or something. So he's around all that talent. You only have 12 and a half sacks and you're playing at top competition. And I get it. The measurables are off the chart, but that's the things you have to consider. And that's maybe the reason why he's there at number 19. So absolutely. I think any of those players at the end of the day would be great in a Buccaneer uniform and absolutely could be a need because you talk about it. Shaq Barrett is
It's an
coming off.
absolute need. It's not it could be. It's an absolute need for
Well,
pass rushers.
bro, Shaq Barrett is coming off a major injury.
Right.
Anthony Nelson improved last year. You're not sure about Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. You assume you already got Vita Vea on the fold. Logan Hall
Right.
is going to get an opportunity. You haven't signed Golston yet. You haven't signed Akeem Hicks. So, yeah, it's definitely a need, and you got to improve that defense. And, of course, that division now is only going to get better. I know it sounds funny because it's one of the worst in football, but Derek Carr is in New Orleans. You got to get after him. Whomever the Carolina Panthers are going to draft, and, of course, Desmond Ridder. So you still have to get after the quarterback. And, Todd Bowles is a defensive-minded coach. We're sitting here talking about offense and speed and all that, but what do we know about defensive-minded coaches? They like to draft edge rushers, defense.
But I'll say this. You want to establish a running game, you got to have the guys up front to do that. And we know that Dave Canales coming on board, they want to establish a running game. To me, you've got to fortify this offensive line. Especially if a guy like Darnell Wright, who's a road grading kind of guy, played very well against Will Anderson when they played Alabama this year. Broderick Jones played very well against high-end talent. So those are the two guys in my book. If those two guys are there, they are proven run blockers in an offense that we want to become much more of a running team.
Agree. And Jones is more of a left tackle. So do you start Broderick Jones from Georgia at the left tackle?
Yep. Then you can keep Tristan.
Yeah, but that's tough, though, because you see the transition of having a left starting tackle as a rookie. I'm not sure if you want to go down that road. I think that's the reason why you go with the Tristan Wirfs. Where do you lie here, Jason, on a Luke Goedeke? And once again, I keep on going back to it because people say, well, they have to address the offensive line. Do they?
We're going to see. We've not seen Luke Goedeke play right tackle in the NFL, so we don't know.
When he did play right tackle, and it was a throwaway game for the Atlanta Falcons, he played at his natural position. He played well. But
again, it was a throwaway, meaningless game, and I know it's against Atlanta. Yeah, but you got to be able to see it over time. One game or one half ain't going to answer that question for me. The Bucs like him. They drafted a second-round pick. He was a right tackle in college. He was a really good right tackle. We may have just mispositioned him last year by trying to force feed him at left guard. He might be the natural right tackle and the guy we've been sitting on for a year. So we're going to see.
Yeah, and I will speculate that possibly they could just pass on an offensive tackle, even if there is one on the board.
Maybe.
Like Luke Goedeke so much. I think that's the intriguing thing. People are saying, well, because Tristan Wirfs came out and said he's working both positions, well, now you're drafting a right tackle. Not so fast. Because
I agree.
He's the best of the second-round pick. So I think, again, that's where the intrigue is on Thursday night, and the Bucs are going to have to wait a little bit. But there could be players on the board because going back to 2017, it was assumed that if Dalvin Cook was on the board at the time, they would take him. But here comes O.J. Howard, who was known as a top 10 pick. He falls right into your lap. And, of course, the value was there. Dirk Cutter loved him, so they had to take him. So you never know if a situation like that happens. Now, I know I don't want to steal your thunder on this. You want to talk about the position that everybody wants to talk about in every NFL football game and every NFL draft. It's the quarterback position.
Yep, let's get to it. I mean, there's varying rumors, speculation that Will Levis is falling, Anthony Richardson potentially. One of these, most people don't have first round grades on all these four quarterbacks, and then you throw in Hendon Hooker into the mix. What do you do with a guy like Hendon Hooker? He's an older guy, but he came from a kind of a air raid system at Tennessee. So you got five quarterbacks that are in the mix. Are the Bucs in the quarterback market this year? I don't think they are, unless a guy. I think the one guy they would trade up for, in my opinion, if he got past 12 or 13, would be Anthony Richardson. I think if Anthony Richardson was still there after Tennessee picked at 11 and they don't take Anthony Richardson, if he were there at 12 or 13, I could see the Bucs making a move up for Anthony Richardson.
Because of the potential, because of the upside, because of the high ceiling, not necessarily because of what he did in college. Because
correct.
And you look at the tape of what he did in college, he's a subpar 50% completion percentage passer. He's not consistent with his throws.
Right.
His footwork is all over the place, but the potential is immense with him. And that's why I think he's going to go top 10. I have a bet with my co-host out there, Leo Haggerty, and of course, Harry the Greek, and also a fan named Roger Shue on Wings and Steak, that Richardson goes top 10, at least top 5, because I feel like what are the Houston Texans going to do at number 2?
Doesn't sound like they're going to pick a quarterback from the last few days you've been hearing. Sounds like they're picking defensive end.
Do you buy that? Do you buy that?
I do, because they have another pick in the middle of the first round that they could take a Hendon Hooker if they really wanted to.
Exactly right. They're 2 and 12 right there.
If you really want the defensive end, you'll be able to get Hendon Hooker at number 12 if that's the guy you like. And he's,
right.
And sure, is 12 maybe a little high for Hendon Hooker? Probably a few spots. But if you think he's your quarterback, then it's never too high. You take him. I think they could go defensive end at 2, Hendon Hooker at 12.
Yeah, Will Anderson or Jalen Carter at the end of the day, or maybe a Tyree.
No, I think they'll go with the cleanest, safest pick. Will Anderson, Alabama guy. DeMeco Ryans, Alabama guy. He knows that program. I think it's a safe pick. It's kind of a Mario Williams kind of pick, potentially. He's not as athletic as Mario, but I think they would take, again, but there's lots of talk out there. Tyree Wilson might be a little bit better long-term prospect than Will Anderson. But again, I think you could see defensive end for Houston at 2, quarterback at 12 potentially.
And that's it. And then that's where the draft kind of starts at 2. And then you got 3, the Arizona Cardinals. They're going to be fielding calls. So that's why I feel like it's going to be either Richardson, Levis, Hooker may be on the board because of the injury history. If it wasn't for the injury, he may be in that conversation as the number 1 quarterback in this draft. Over 50 touchdowns, under 10 interceptions, something along the lines of like 58 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. I get it. He's 25 years old, but those numbers are amazing, especially versus SEC competition.
So you have to be careful because that system was tailor-made for guys getting wide open. So you have to be careful. I get your point. You like the accuracy, you like the productivity. Again, he's older, coming off an injury. Will he be ready to? I don't even know if he injured himself in late November. Is he going to be ready for training camp in August? I don't know about that.
Well, I don't know about that either, but if you have already an established quarterback, say like the Raiders, you have Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yep.
They would be interested in a Hendon Hooker at number 7 if he's
that's rich for him.
Well, again, that's been the talk, and
we'll see.
Trade up for Anthony Richardson. So who would you rather have, Jason Powers, and Anthony Richardson, who has immense talent but also has the bust potential there?
I would take Richardson over Hooker.
I vary it because I love Richardson's potential, but can you turn him around? Can you make him into the next Josh Allen? Where when Allen was coming out of Wyoming, he was also a sub 50% completion percentage, and then you turn him into a young.
The Bucs have never had a quarterback at that position with those kind of athletic skills.
You're right.
Never.
You're exactly right. But also, we remember when a guy is passed for under 60% completion percentage, there's more of an opportunity to be a bust. I always go back to Josh.
Sure.
Under 50% completion percentage. So for every Josh Allen, there's a Josh Freeman.
Sure.
Conversation. I think Freeman had those. He had those traits.
But again, we took Freeman at 19, so it's not like we took Freeman in the top 10. We took him mid-level first round.
Maybe took him at 17 because they
middle of the first round. My point is he wasn't a top 5 pick. So again, I would say the odds of Richardson being there for the Bucs at 19 is probably slim to none. But if he gets past Tennessee at 11, there's talk that the Bucs could trade up for him to go get him. I could see the Bucs doing that because again, all these quarterbacks, we all think, oh, these guys are gonna. It's at best 50% hit rate of a guy that's even good. Forget about Hall of Famer, All Pro. We're talking about just serviceable starting quarterbacks is 50% at best.
Richardson does not get out of the top 10. I win my bet. I
don't think so. I'm with you. I don't think he does either. But if he does, because every year there's a player or two that drops because of whatever reason. There's guys.
Who it is? It's crazy to say this, and I can't believe we're saying this right now on this podcast, on the No Quarter Given podcast on the Buck Power podcast network. CJ Stroud.
He ain't getting past about 5 or 6 at the worst.
I feel like there is some type of effort here by the media or by somebody that is trying to get this guy's stock down because he took this test, which replaced the Wonderlic F2 test here.
And didn't do very well on it.
Did horrible. 18%.
Right? Yeah.
There's a report out there saying that there was an NFL executive saying this is a red flag. He could be a bust. Could that be a player who was originally thought at the time when Carolina traded up?
He will never get out of the top 10.
Okay.
Never. Somebody will either trade in to the top 10 to get him. He will never. He has zero chance of getting out of the top 10. Zero.
I think it's amazing that we're even talking about this because he has all the measurables. He's done it against top competition. He did it against Georgia. And yet I still think there's a possibility for some reason that
Will Levis is the guy to me that could drop.
And he's the guy that's being associated with the Indianapolis Colts and also the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because I get it. They're doing all these mock drafts at the end of the day, but they're also saying the Bucs would trade up for him. They love him. They love his size, love his measurables.
No, that's the guy that has bust written all over him.
Right. I mean, a lot of these quarterbacks that we're talking about, they have bust written all over them, but because of the potential at the end of the day, teams are not going to be able to resist the temptation of drafting a quarterback. That's just the way it is.
All right, so we're going to take a quick little break here. We're going to let you hear from Luke Easterling. He's going to give you his analysis of what he thinks. All this chatter, we're talking about quarterbacks, offensive linemen. Is there another wild card player or two that he likes to potentially link to the Bucs? We're going to get Luke's thoughts on the middle rounds of this draft. This is not the most elite draft on record. A lot of people think the round 2 through 5 is the meat part of this draft. There's a lot of good players. There's not a lot of elite players here at the top end, but a lot of people think this is a 2 through 5 round draft where the quality of your players are going to be in those 4 rounds. So Luke Easterling, Athlon Sports NFL draft analyst, is going to be joining us in just a second with his thoughts on the Buccaneers. And when Luke's done, Luke and I are going to have our chat. We will be back, and we're going to get Peter. We're going to get a couple of your favorite moments over the years, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, Luke Easterling coming right up here on No Quarter Given. All right, we're back. No Quarter Given podcast, part of the buckpower.com podcast network. Appreciate you finding us. Jason and Peter here with you, giving a little Bucs preview. You just heard from Luke Easterling. Hopefully you enjoyed his comments. Again, this is all Luke does is cover the NFL draft. He's got relationships with the Buccaneers front office. He is very tied into to the Buccaneer front office, so the information he's telling you is again not the absolute truth, but he's hearing good information from coaches and personnel guys in this organization. He's been based here in Tampa for a long time. He knows Jason Light well. He knows how he thinks a little bit. So hopefully you enjoyed Luke's analysis of the Buccaneers and what he thinks is gonna happen with the Buccaneers as we move. All right, Peter Blake.
Yes.
Give me your thoughts. Creamsicle jerseys coming back in 2023. You like it for a 1-game scenario? You like it?
I love it, but it also brings back bad memories. But of course, I always tell this story. I used to wear a jacket when I was in 7th grade, whether the Bucs won or lost or not. And actually, somebody burned a hole into that jacket, got it signed eventually by the great Paul Gruber. So, a little bittersweet because when they were
were you putting out your Marlboros back in 7th grade? Was that like a smoke burn in your jacket?
No, not at all. Somebody actually took a lighter and burnt a hole into the jacket. They took it off of me, burned a hole in it at the time, and I kept on wearing it, and I still have it to this day. So
Paul Gruber, huh? Attaboy.
Paul Gruber has signed that jacket. I went to his church, got it signed, got a chance to talk to him when I was young, and it was amazing. It was an amazing thing to get it signed because, of course, he went into the Ring of Honor, and at the time, it was either Paul Gruber or it was Mark Carrier. Those are the players that you loved.
Yeah, I got you. I like it too. I like that the Bucs are going to wear the creamsicles once a year. I think it's a great tribute to the throwback of the start of the franchise. I love it. So I think it'll be a good thing that we do bring it'll be interesting to see which game they end up deciding to wear the throwbacks. But I'm with you. I like the throwback jerseys from circa back in the day. All right. Give me your favorite. Let's start with the bad stuff first. What was your worst draft memory?
2017, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I thought it was going to be Dalvin Cook at number 19. It should have been Dalvin Cook at number 19. Instead, they took O.J. Howard. There was talk they were going to trade back into the 2nd round and get Dalvin Cook. They didn't get it, so I was disappointed by that. And then I think,
You get one. You only get one.
okay, that's one. That's the one I was
Okay.
disappointed with. Okay.
I'm gonna give you one for Buck fans that'll remember this. It was a pick that never turned out to be, and we actually drafted this person,
Uh-huh.
Vincent Edward Bo Jackson.
Ugh.
What could have been if Bo was toting the rock in the I formation back in the mid 1980s? What could have been with Bo Jackson, the original two-sport star, the original the Heisman Trophy winner out of Auburn. If you remember, Buck fans, he refused to sign with the Buccaneers. Hugh Culverhouse basically sabotaged his baseball eligibility at Auburn by flying him down to Tampa in the pre-draft, which was at the time was illegal, which burned up his baseball eligibility. He never forgot the Buccaneers for that, refused to sign. We still picked him, so we lose the pick. We get nothing for the pick because the Bucs can't sign him. And obviously we know what Bo Jackson ended. I mean, obviously he played for the Raiders later on, had the hip issue. But again, I would have loved to have seen Bo Jackson in the I formation mid-1980s in a Tampa Bay Buccaneer uniform.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
I mean, not that would have turned the fortunes of the franchise around, but you never know.
You never know, right? And he turned out to be a 7th-round pick for the Raiders. And, of course, he had a couple years there that were amazing, and then he went out with an injury, and he was never the same player after that. A moment that I did enjoy, I think, was 1997. I don't think that's when the Bucs had 2 first-round draft picks. I stayed up the night before with my father, and we came up with 2 players at the time. One of those was Warrick Dunn. We were so excited when he got drafted, and I think it was 12 and 16 at the time, and then they drafted Riedel Anthony. So I think it was Anthony first, or was it Dunn and Anthony? But both of those players win in that draft. That was one of my favorites. And then, of course, 2015, Jameis Winston. I knew that was going to be the pick. Hope sprang eternal. It didn't necessarily work out, but we're Florida State fans. Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. He's about to come here and do some damage.
Man, I'm shocked. I'm shocked you forgot one.
What's up?
Shocked you didn't go 1995, Sapp and Brooks in the same draft. Remember, Warren Sapp was the perennial top 3 pick. He ended up falling in the draft because of rumors about marijuana use and all that stuff at Miami. You had Derek Brooks, the All-American out of Florida State at linebacker. Obviously, you don't want to play Monday morning quarterback because they ended up being Hall of Fame. What I loved about that draft, 2 things for me. One, they were Florida guys. That's the first time the Bucs had really taken Florida guys that high in the draft, and elite Florida guys at that. Sapp was a perennial All-American. Brooks was an All-American. So I like that they took the Florida guys from winning teams. And 2, I had a playing history with Derek Brooks. I played with Derek Brooks at Florida State for a year. So up from where he started to where he was, I had a little personal connection there. So to me, and again, I think that was the turnaround of the franchise going upward again, was the drafting of Sapp and Brooks.
Absolutely. I agree with you totally. And, Sam Weiss and Rich McKay, they don't get enough credit for those 2 picks because they're Hall of Famers, of course. You had, Eric Rett, Horace Copeland, Lamar Jackson, Casey Walden. I mean, they went out of the state. They
were mid-round picks, though.
Guys. Right. Real quick, the Mel Kiper story. Got to tell this.
Quick. Got to go quick.
1996. I don't have his draft report. I lose it. A couple days before, I call him. He actually gets on the phone, signs a draft report, sends it to me. I decided to pick Simeon Rice. He was right with the draft report. He picked Reagan Upshaw at the time.
Okay.
For Tony Dungy. So, but I remember him talking to me. It was just so cool. And
nice job
for me, for Mel Kiper.
All right, give me a pick. Who you like at 19? They keep their pick at 19. Who do you like? Make a pick.
You know what? I am going to go with, Bijan Robinson is going to be the pick, the running back. I'm going to go running back on that. I think they're going to do it. I don't know why. I don't think they're going to go offensive line. I'm going to go Bijan Robinson.
If Broderick Jones is there, I think they take Broderick Jones. If he's not there, I think they take Nolan Smith.
Okay. Brian Branch, I'll throw that in there too.
Okay. And then again, there's lots of talk. The Bucs could trade down a couple spots. Remember, they traded out of the first round last year, Buccaneer fans. All right, remember, Buck fans, Thursday nights, round 1, Fridays, round 2 and 3, and then 4 through 7 is on Saturday. Give me a quick plug, Peter Blake. Go.
Sports Web live on Facebook, on YouTube. Check it out on Wednesday night, starting at 8 o'clock. Special start time for the fan mock draft.
You got it. And again, Powers on Sports podcast. We'll have a draft preview as well this week. The entire draft, not just Buccaneer talk. We'll be talking all things NFL draft. Powers on Sports podcast, your favorite podcast platform. Peter Blake, great job. Keep up the great work. Paul Stewart, appreciate the opportunity. And again, you're listening to No Quarter Given podcast. If you haven't already done so, subscribe, rate, and review. And Buccaneer fans, we'll do a little post-draft podcast as well in the next week or two, summarizing the Bucs pick. So enjoy the draft, and we'll see you real soon on the No Quarter Given podcast.